What's up? This is EJ Stewart.
What if I drop 40 days, 40 nights?
One, you can't do it.
All you are your words. If there's anything you learned about me, I'm going to keep it 100 with you.
Every morning, every night for 40 days.
Going to be a long 40 days this year.
My skill shot will hold for your city for 40 days, 40 nights.
Rest in peace to all my ops.
For 40 days. If I can do that, then everything will be okay.
You're the guy who can't finish a sandwich. You think you can go 40 days? This isn't normal!
Oh, you're wrong, brother. I'm gonna go the distance.
Let's go! I think "Let's Go" is apropos for this show. I think a lot of Giants fans this morning are yelling "Let's go" after what they heard overnight. This is EJ Stewart. You are watching live 40 days, 40 nights. We are in day number 4. So you know how much this is in quite a journey we've been on. Day number 4 of 40 days and 40 nights. We got a monster show today. Big news out of the NFL, big news out of New York sports. The New York Giants get their guy. The New York Giants are in lockstep and are finalizing a deal to bring on John Harbaugh to become their next head coach. We will talk about the ramifications for the New York Giants and how they got that deal done or are about to finalize that deal and make it official. We'll also talk about a terrible loss by the New York Knicks. A terrible loss, an awful performance in Sacramento. And to make matters worse, Jalen Brunson goes down with an ankle injury. So we'll give you the latest update on that. We'll also talk about the Steelers head coaching search as they narrow down some candidates. We'll also talk about the Eagles, who aren't looking for a head coach, but are looking for an offensive coordinator. There was a weird situation going on potentially with Ja Morant, which I can't believe we're doing 3 straight days of Ja Morant, but there's a possibility we will have to do that because cameras saw maybe getting into some kind of altercation with a teammate on the court. We'll show the video and let you be the judge. And this Kyle Tucker thing is coming down to the wire, it appears. And ESPN's Jeff Passan made a kind of thing that announcement or I guess a proclamation or I guess a report. I don't know how you would describe it. But he let out something that I think nobody expected to hear in terms of just how far the Blue Jays may be willing to go to sign Kyle Tucker. And I posted it last night as a tease, and I posted it early this morning as an official announcement. If you listen to me this show, if you're a fan of what we're doing here with 40 Days and 40 Nights, in part because of the work and the success of the Maggie and Perloff show, obviously me being a producer, executive producer of the Maggie and Perloff show, we had a phenomenal team. Obviously Maggie Gray and Andrew Perloff, phenomenal host, Andrew Bogish, phenomenal update anchor / host, and Manny Rodriguez, phenomenal update anchor, and for us, obviously associate producer. We got a little bit of a mini reunion happening live at 9 a.m. this morning. My guy, Manny Rodriguez, will be joining the show live here in full effect to brag about his New York Giants. Because if you watch Maggie and Perloff show, listen to Maggie and Perloff show, you know how much Manny loves his New York Giants. I actually don't know his opinion on the New York Giants hire, to be clear. Like, I actually have not seen any tweets he's posted or how he's been looking at the situation. But considering how much he wanted that last coaching, coaching system or coaching group fired in terms of Brian Daboll and his staff, I would assume having someone as experienced, having someone as successful as John Harbaugh will make my guy Manny really happy and really excited. And I'm really excited to just talk to him. I mean, obviously the whole group, I'll let you guys in a little, like, I don't know if it's a secret, but like, the group chat's still going on. We're still texting regularly. Maggie and Perloff and Manny and Bogish and my guy Andrew Kaplan, who again I shouted out earlier in the week because he made the phenomenal pseudo album cover of the 40 Days and 40 Nights live stream. So we've been in agreement, or not in agreement, that's the right word. We've been in communication, that's the right word. 8 in brain hitting me right now. We've definitely been in communication. We've been chatting, but I actually don't know how he feels about Harbaugh. Man, he was known to put out these very braggadocious texts whenever his team goes well. does something good, okay, things going well, he'll come on and brag about it. He's not sending any braggadocious text as of now. Is 8:09 a.m., but he did agree to come on this show to talk about John Harbaugh. So I expect braggadocious Manny in full effect. We'll also probably get into some Knicks and just see how my man's doing. It'll be a fun conversation. So we got a lot to get to, man. This is going to be an awesome edition of 48 to 40 Nights. Like I say every show, this show is streaming live, multiple places. Streaming live on our YouTube channel, New Generation Media. You watch us on YouTube. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. Give us a like, give a comment, give us as much engagement as possible. Make sure you subscribe to New Generation Media so you know every time we're dropping live. 40 Days, 40 Nights comes at you every weekday, 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. Streaming live on YouTube. Also streaming live from my X account, EJ_Stewart, as well as IG Live. Action EJs where you'll find me on Instagram. So again, 8 a.m., 6 p.m., live new shows with your boy EJ Stewart for 40 Days, 40 Nights, counting down 40 days and 40 nights of me doing doubleheader shows. Again, you can follow us in terms of where we're broadcasting live. YouTube, New Generation Media, X, EJ_Stewart, Instagram, Action EJ. Make sure you follow me also on those accounts, and make sure you follow the show's accounts, or rather the channel's accounts. New Generation Pod is where we are on X, and New Generation Podcasts is where you'll find us on Instagram. I want to give a major shout out once again to my guy Ray Jarvis, who came on yesterday, did a phenomenal job talking about the album release of J. Cole. Every single show that we do gets posted on YouTube, so if you miss a show, you can always go back and watch other shows. They're also posted on our audio podcast channel. So go over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn, wherever is your audio streaming service of choice. Head over there. You will find 40 Days and 40 Nights under the channel New Generation Podcast Network. Every episode gets podcasted on there. New Generation Podcast Network, where you'll find our channel where we're posting not just this show, but all the other shows under New Generation umbrella. We have Hero Talk talking Marvel. We have Sports Talk talking sports, obviously. We have Imperial Broadcast talking Star Wars. So make sure you support us in every way you can. I do appreciate all the support we've been getting on this so far. We had a peak of 180 plus viewers yesterday live, which was awesome. Definitely thank you to the people that have supported so far. And let's just get the ball rolling with today's show, because today's show is going to be a good one, man. So let's, again, get the ball rolling. We have a new head coach for the New York Giants. It is indeed John Harbaugh. Giants and Harbaugh are finalizing an agreement for him to become the next Giant coach. By all accounts, he has indeed accepted the Giants job, and we are now at the phase of him putting together his staff, signing on the dotted line, and then it will be done. He will be the new Giants head coach. The Giants put on a full court press yesterday to get him to agree to become the coach. The goal and the mission was for him to not leave the building. He did leave the building, which we talked about last night. But it appears, I guess, he'll be just coming right back, because he was expected to meet with the Tennessee Titans at his home today. That is not going to happen. He was expected to eventually meet with the Falcons. That will not happen, because he has accepted the Giants' offer to become their next head coach. And what comes with John Harbaugh becoming next head coach, he has full control of his coaching staff. The Giants are apparently giving him as much money and resources necessary to put together that staff. Early returns is that it is expected that Todd Monken, who is the offensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens for the past, I guess, at least 3 or 4 seasons. He was offensive coordinator, obviously, during Lamar Jackson's MVP season and 2 of his All-Pro first-team seasons. He's expected to join John Harbaugh on the Giants coaching staff. So you got Harbaugh, who's coming to New York. He's bringing his offensive coordinator, Todd Monken, with him. So I'll say this. This is a great hire. There's no other way to spin this in any way that looks like the Giants maybe somehow screwed this up. The Giants went all in. They were bold in letting everyone know that this is the guy they wanted. They were bold in letting John Harbaugh know that he was their guy. he was the one that they think can turn this thing around, and they got him. So all you can do is really give the Giants a huge round of applause. They did their thing. Let me give them a official round of applause, man. Official round of applause for the New York Giants. They handled their business in a way that they just haven't been for the last 10 to 15 years. The Giants, it kind of is striking. That's kind of going through their previous head coaches since kind of Tom Coughlin left. And it's actually stunning to kind of see just the names that are there and the lack of pizzazz, the lack of experience, the lack of a guy who's a proven winner. I mean, the Giants have kind of been experimenting, I would say. They've gotten coaches who, when they were on the coaching cycle, were considered the quote-unquote hot candidates. But these were not guys who had a lot of NFL head coaching experience. The one guy that did have NFL head coaching experience was terrible with Pat Shurmur in terms of his previous stop in Cleveland. So it was not like they had been previously hiring a bunch of guys that you said, well, the Giants hired guys with great reputations for being good head coaches. They just didn't work out. The Giants, despite being one of the flagship organizations of the NFL, had not hired a A1 type candidate. This is a bottom line. It's simple. And it's kind of like, to me, almost jarring to kind of see them now with John Harbaugh in the Photoshop pictures of him in Giants blue and wearing the Giants polo and the Giants hat. It's like, wow, yeah, this is a real hire. This is a serious hire. You have a guy who won a Super Bowl, a guy who is essentially a perennial playoff head coach outside of this season. John Harbaugh is extremely successful. Does he have his flaws? Has he had gaffes? Has he had his issues in Baltimore, especially in terms of closing the deal and getting them back to the Super Bowl after winning the Super Bowl many years ago? Yeah, of course. If you're a Giant fan or you're the New York Giants, you do not care about that at all. That has nothing to do with where you are. You got to play where your feet are, as they say. And if you're a team like the Packers or a team like the Steelers, and you're saying that, oh, we need a coach who can get us over the top because we keep hitting this brick wall, then okay, if you want to have those concerns about John Harbaugh and maybe the Ravens, quote-unquote, underachieving, it's hard to say because they were in the playoffs every year, but they did have an MVP quarterback. They do have maybe arguably a generational talent at quarterback, and they have not gotten to the Super Bowl with him. But those are things you can't be concerned about because you've been a laughingstock. You haven't been able to get to the playoffs in most of these last 10 to 15 years. You've been a doormat of the NFC. So the concept of, well, John Harbaugh hasn't won enough in big games or hasn't won enough in the playoffs is hogwash. It is not something at all Giants fans should be concerned about. From what I've seen, it doesn't seem like Giant fans are too concerned about it at all. They sound very happy. But I think observers as well, they should not at all be concerned about what's going on with whether or not John Harbaugh is going to be able to get the Giants over the top to win a Super Bowl. He may be able to. He has proven he can win a Super Bowl, but that's not where you're at. You're trying to get the Giants back to a level of respectability. You're trying to get the Giants back to establishing what is a winning culture in the NFL, which is something that I think the last two particular head coaches seemed, badly ill-equipped to do. They got two guys in Daboll and Joe Judge who I think had the rah-rah effect, but lacked, I think at times maturity, the leadership, and the experience to know what it took, I think, to build a sustained winner. And the Giants, as I've said since this entire season unfolded, was that I looked at the Giants situation and said, they need an adult in the room. They have a team of guys who seem to be kind of going off and doing their own thing when you watch them play, when you see how they interact. We don't see it, but the reporting we've seen on how they're carrying themselves from week to week, with guys missing meetings, guys falling asleep in the facility like Abdul Carter. The team just seemed to lack a level of maturity and understanding of what it means to be an NFL winner at this point. And the last two guys that had those guys and their temperaments, there was no way that was ever going to happen. To me, when I think of John Harbaugh, I think of a culture builder. I think of a guy who knows what it takes for a football team to be successful and putting together a program for them to become that. So when you're a Giant fan and you're looking at the situation, I'm thinking, all right, you got the number one issue on your list checked off. That was the one thing you absolutely had to do. The number two thing you had to do was you had to bring in an offensive system and an offensive game plan that would cultivate the development of Jackson Dart. Now, that was one of the few reasons why I wasn't as high on John Harbaugh as I was on someone like Mike McCarthy, because Mike McCarthy is an offensive head coach. He has cultivated the development of other young QBs into stars like Aaron Rodgers, like Dak Prescott. So I was a big Mike McCarthy guy. But if you tell me you're getting John Harbaugh, who was obviously around for the growth of Lamar Jackson, even though he wasn't calling the plays and perhaps wasn't strategizing the offensive game plan, he is bringing Todd Monken, who is, in my opinion, I know the Ravens had a down year and they had issues or whatever. I still think Todd Monken is a phenomenal offensive coordinator. How he brought Lamar Jackson along as a passer. Lamar Jackson, of course, deserves some credit as well in terms of improving as a passer. But how he brought Lamar Jackson along as a passer, I thought he made Lamar and showed that Lamar could do some things I think a lot of people didn't think he could do. Didn't think he was capable of. And Monken did a phenomenal job of that. So you bring him along and have him be the mentor to bring along Jackson Dart, a quarterback who, to me, I look at as a mold of clay. I think we saw some good things from him. I think we know he has the physical tools to potentially be a good quarterback. I don't think anyone can say for certain, given how he played this year, that he is going to be a good to great quarterback. I don't think that verdict is in yet. I think you look at Dart, there was some uneven play. There were times where he looked really good. There were stretches when he looked absolutely awful. Which is what you expect from a rookie. Again, it's not like it was some indictment on him. And I think the fact that you had a lot of these nice, bright moments from him makes you feel hopeful that he can become the Giants' franchise quarterback. But in order for that to happen, he had to get the hell away from Brian Daboll and Kafka and how they were coaching him, allowing him to just ram his head through a brick wall, essentially, in terms of the way he was running around and throwing his body around and not really trusting the offense in a way that I think would have kept him healthy and kept him upright. Todd Monken found a way to allow Lamar Jackson to use his legs as a weapon, but relatively speaking, I know he got banged up this year, relatively speaking, also keep him healthy and also improve his passing. So Monken is a home run hire for me as an offensive coordinator to develop Jackson Dart. So I can't sit here and really give you a lot of negatives. And I'm not, it's like I'm not someone who likes to come here and just sing everyone's praises, whatever. I'll rip people if I have to rip people, but there's no ripping of the New York Giants today. I don't know how anyone can sit around and say the Giants screwed this up. The Giants 100% got this right, and I'm just impressed that they were able to lock in on the guy that they absolutely wanted. This is going to be a fun time for the New York Giants, and I don't like to necessarily always pit the New York teams together because they're not. I don't look at them as rivals, and I don't dislike the Giants as a Jet fan. I root for the Giants. I root for the Giants to win every game except for when they play the Jets. So I'm happy the Giants were able to hire John Harbaugh. I've been upset that I've had to sit through miserable New York football, not just Jet football, but just New York football in general for the past 15 years. So I'm happy. I'm thrilled for the Giants and their fans that they got John Harbaugh. What I will say is it does, just real quickly on just a small quick Jet perspective, it is kind of like you see the Giants hire former Super Bowl head coach John Harbaugh, who is essentially a 60% winner percentage. His teams always go to the playoffs. They always seem to have the right stuff to have a sustained success, a sustained model for winning. And then you look on your side and you have no idea if your head coach can coach. It's not a good feeling. And I know there's some folks being like, oh, the Jets screwed this up because they would have fired Glenn. They could have been in on this coaching search. The Jets were not getting John Harbaugh. I think to even mention that is idiotic. The Jets, if they fired Aaron Glenn after 1 year, were going to be one of the, even despite, I think, the draft capital, I still think we're going to be one of the bottom jobs in terms of who they could hire next. You weren't going to get Mike Tomlin. You weren't going to get, John Harbaugh. I don't think you're getting Mike McCarthy. Like you're going to have to get what they've been getting, which is either a failed head coach like a Mike McDaniel who's just desperate for a job, a la what we saw with Adam Gase, or you're going to get an unproven coordinator. That's just the reality. That was what they were going to get if they fired Aaron Glenn. Now it doesn't mean that that guy wouldn't have worked. That guy could have been awesome for the New York Jets. But I just think it is weird people keep running, the Jets could have got on this. Like, no, they couldn't. The Jets wouldn't have been part of this mix at all. The Jets, in terms of the overall landscape of the NFL and how the NFL and the people within it view franchises, the Giants are here, Jets are here. So there is no conversation about the Jets could get under John Harbaugh. But I do think just as a Jets fan, in terms of just watching what's happening on the quote-unquote the other side of the street, and it does kind of mean like, man, okay, Giants have been a disaster, but you do feel like today things could have changed for them. That today things may be looking on the bright side because now they have a head coach who has a clue. And you look at your side and you say, I have no idea if we're going to go in the right direction. There's no indication, given what we watched last year, that things will work out with Aaron Glenn. Does not mean it won't work out. It was only his first year, and I keep stressing that. But there's a proven track record with John Harbaugh for Giants fans to point to and say, we're going to get this thing right. There's nothing to point to with Aaron Glenn, given what you saw from him last year, to think that he can get it right. So that's a little bit of a bummer. I want to get to some of these comments, man, because again, it's been great that a lot of you folks have been, commenting me in the comment section, supporting the show in a major way. I'm going to give a shout out to my guy John Lean. He's been rocking with this show almost from the beginning. So shout out to him. Giving a good morning to everybody. Good morning to you, Mr. John Lean. I also want to give a shout out to my guy Eric on Kokomo. Eric, who listens to me on The Fan and calls in on me on The Fan. If you listen to my shows on WFAN New York, hopefully I'll be getting on the mic soon to talk about this stuff going on with the New York Giants. Eric, a longtime listener and loyal caller, he's saying what's up, giving a sup to my guy Eric. I'm going to give a sup to my guy Ariel, a good friend of mine, and he's a huge Giant fan. He texted the group chat. I talk about multiple group chats, talking about my guy Manny in the Maggie and Perloff group chat. I have my own friend group chat that includes my guy Ariel, a.k.a. Marquito, as we call him. And he's really excited about this, agrees with the concept that the Giants need someone to hold them accountable, which is what I was mentioning, this idea that they need an adult in the room. They just had guys who I think in some ways kind of had this kind of false bravado and this kind of like false machismo aspect, almost like trying to like in some ways mirror what people think of the tough guy, New York or New Jersey guy. And that stuff doesn't matter. That stuff does not matter in terms of whether or not you're building an actual winning culture. And to me, it seems like they have been unable to do that. So completely agree with that. And finally, also, I think a good point from Ariel, which is something that I have said a ton. And it's why I like the idea of Mike McCarthy, which was I feel like Mike McCarthy would have been like their Tom Thibodeau hire, which I totally agree with. I think that was essentially what they need. Someone that, maybe like it seems like, he has a championship, unlike Tom Thibodeau. But regardless of what you think of him and his flaws that we all like to talk about, at the very least, Mike McCarthy wins football games. And he can get your team from being a terrible team to respectable, which is what he did with the Dallas Cowboys. Obviously, the Packers were good when he got there, but he was able to have sustained success as a winner with the Green Bay Packers. Tom Thibodeau has won every place he has coached. So I thought that would have been great for the Giants because I thought the Giants in many ways were in the exact same position as the Knicks. 10 to 15 years of complete futility, head coaches who had no clue, and they had no infrastructure of building a winning culture. I think Mike McCarthy would have been great for that, especially because he was an offensive coach. But I think John Harbaugh is also perfectly fine, especially if he's bringing in such a seasoned offensive coordinator like Tom Monken. I think Ariel said that they just, instead of hiring what he considered Tom Thibodeau hire, which I agree in terms of Mike McCarthy, they just skipped right to Mike Brown, which is quite funny. So shout out to my guy Ariel. Shout out to you guys in the chat. Shout out to you guys that are watching live on YouTube, on X, on IG Live. Giants hire John Harbaugh. Deal could be finalized. Obviously, I'm doing the show live, so I don't know if something's dropped live or anything like that, but deal could be, I think, announced any given moment, any given second, because again, the plan was originally for him to leave New York, have the Titans meet with him today, and then meet with the Falcons probably later in the week or early next week, and the Giants didn't let him do it. And the fact that the Giants were able to have that level of impact on him shows just how much they took this seriously. You got to give a huge shout out to John Mara, to Chris Mara, to a guy that I don't think Giants fans like to give a lot of credit to, and I understand. I wouldn't want to give him a lot of credit either, but I think you got to give a lot of credit to Joe Shane as well. And even if it was more because his presence didn't prevent this, because I think what I kept talking about in terms of why I thought John Harbaugh could potentially prefer the Falcons over the Giants was he would be going to the Falcons, and albeit this by the time that we did the show, we learned that they'd hired Matt Ryan. But he would be going to the Falcons with a clean slate. He'd have a president of football operations, who's, by the way, a rookie, has never done it before, so he'll probably lean a lot on Harbaugh. But he'd be going to a front office that does not have any allegiances to anyone on the roster or anyone in the building. So he could come in and put his imprint on the team, I think, without the GM or the president kind of interfering. He would have probably just as much, if not more, power than the president and general manager. Whereas with the Giants, that may still be the case, but like Shane being around, he's the established general manager, so he still technically, I believe, is still going to be John Harbaugh's quote unquote boss. Now we'll see whether that's actually true. But I just thought that not having to even deal with the Joe Shane mess of it was something that could have been a benefit for John Harbaugh. The fact that Joe Shane is still around, and I only have to assume that he has been a part of the recruitment and part of pitching the vision for what he thinks the New York Giants will be able to do. I think you have to give him some credit. He did not screw this up. He was not an impediment to John Harbaugh becoming the Giants head coach. I think if there's any trepidation about whether or not this will work, it will probably be that he is still around. Because at the end of the day, while the Giants, I know, Ab Schefter put out the tweet that the Giants believe they have franchise cornerstones in Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence, Malik Neighbors, and Jackson Dart. He may have mentioned Cam Scatterboom, and I'm not 100% sure. But those first four guys he mentioned as the Giants believing those guys are the cornerstones of the franchise. Now they got to just figure out the rest, and now they got their head coach who they believe can lead those guys into being a winning team, which I think is perfectly fine to believe. But filling out the rest is a big part of this equation, whether or not the Giants actually become a success. And Joe Shane has given me zero confidence he's been able to do that. The draft picks, the moves he made, they've been awful. Awful. There's no Abdul Carter was a name also that was on that list of quote unquote cornerstones. And Abdul Carter had I think you have to say an up and down rookie year. Like, I know on the field there were some good moments and he played okay, but being benched because he can't show up to meetings, can't show up to planes, like that stuff is bad. And I think some of the nonsense on social media also bad. So it was an up and down year for Abdul Carter, though I think we know the physical traits and physical tools he has to potentially be a game-changing defensive player. So the Giants have some pieces, which is why I thought that this job was a pretty good job. And I think that's what John Harbaugh saw as well. But they do got to figure out the rest. They got to figure out how to get this offensive line to play consistently, whether it's keeping these same guys and bringing a new offensive line coach or whatever, or if it means getting rid of some of these guys on the offensive line. You got a healthier Andrew Thomas. You had to love that. But it means getting rid of some of the guys on the offensive line and reshuffling it yet again. They got to figure out the defense. A defense that has this many names and quote-unquote talented guys should not be as dreadful as they were. So they got to figure out the secondary. They need probably two corners. They need at least one safety. I think the linebacker position is okay. I think linebacker is probably the least most important position in the NFL at this point. But linebacker, I think they're okay. But the fact that they could not stop the pass, the fact that people were able to run on them for a team that has the front four they have, that shouldn't be. So they got a lot of work to do. I don't want to make it sound like John Harbaugh is walking into a Ferrari and now he's going to take the Giants to the Super Bowl. There's a lot of work to do. But I think the head coach had been a part of the problem this entire time. So now that part of it you don't got to worry about, it allows you to then help the other aspects of the situation. And John Harbaugh himself may also be able to bring along some of these other guys that have actually struggled. Like a head coach could always, end up being the best thing for a roster that's maybe, not as good. Like we mentioned Tom Thibodeau earlier, like he came to a Knicks team that nobody thought had a great roster. And then he came in and took them to the playoffs immediately because he was able to take the Knicks trash and turn them into treasure. Like there's an opportunity for potentially John Harbaugh to come in and guys who were underachieving, guys who didn't play well, guys who weren't performing here in New York, they may play better under John Harbaugh. So that's another aspect to this as well. So we got plenty more on this breaking news of the Giants late last night. I'm glad I was up late. I mean, I was not glad I was up late watching that Nick debacle that we'll get to in a second, but I was glad I was up late so I got to see the news happen about John Harbaugh being hired. So I was able to prepare last night for talking about this in a way in which I'm not waking up trying to figure out what the hell happened. A lot of folks are waking up this morning learning, and I'm seeing the tweets and posts this morning. People saying, "Oh my God, we got John Harbaugh." A lot of people are waking up to that. So I think that it is a good thing that we're in a situation where I was able to stay up late and we got this news last night. It shows you just, again, how intense the Giants were. I mean, the guy was at the airport and you had reporters still saying the Giants are still recruiting John Harbaugh. I'm like, he's at the airport. Let him leave. What are we doing here? But I think they knew. I think they knew that this was the right marriage. I think John Harbaugh deep down knew this was the right marriage, and they got it done. So shout out to the New York Giants. Like I mentioned earlier, super exciting moment for the show because we'll have resident Giant fan and my good friend and partner from the Maggie and Perlow show, me being the executive producer, my guy Manny Rodriguez being the associate producer. He is a massive New York Giants fan. He will be live on the show at 9 a.m. to talk about the Giants hiring John Harbaugh. I definitely want to get his thoughts on the Knicks as well that we'll get to right now because the Knicks also opposite fields in terms of the Giants. I know the Knicks are a much better team than the Giants, but I think the vibes are far from immaculate right now with how the team is playing. Manny, of course, again, being a huge Knicks fan, I definitely want to get his thoughts on that as well. But let's get to the Knicks. Terrible night. One of the worst nights of the season. They get destroyed by the Sacramento Kings, and I don't think the score at all does any justice to like how that game went. I think the final score was 112-101. They were down by 20 points for large portions of this game. The team's shooting went completely awire. And then beyond just the shooting, because we know shots don't fall sometimes, it was just a lifeless performance. The defense was horrendous for large stretches. Like the first quarter, it seemed like the Knicks didn't want to guard anybody. Again, offense also struggled mightily. Particularly what was concerning was just how sloppy they were, throwing the ball all over the yard, leading out to easy layups and easy fast breaks for the Sacramento Kings. Terrible night on the court. What may have been worse was Jalen Brunson going down with another ankle injury. So early in the game, this is just 5 minutes into the game, the Knicks are already getting smoked. Like it's one of those things. It was immediate. Where it's like, oh, the Knicks don't look good. This does not look like this is going to go the right way. But it's the NBA, and the Knicks may come back, so you never know. But the night started bad. And 5 minutes into the game, Jalen Brunson makes a move, spins, and goes down without anybody touching him. It was non-contact with an ankle injury. To be clear, it wasn't indeed an ankle. I know we hear non-contact. Was not an Achilles. Doesn't appear to be Achilles or anything like that. But Jalen Brunson was injured. He was initially considered questionable to return. Knicks have a back-to-back tonight. They play against the Warriors. I think considering they have a back-to-back tonight, I didn't think there was any chance he was coming back in the game. And by halftime, they had ruled him out with an ankle injury. There was no other specification regarding his status, how bad the injury was, whether or not he's expected to play tonight, and no other prognosis other than he injured his ankle. I would only assume x-rays are negative and that he didn't break his ankle. He walked kind of to the back of the locker room, so I don't think he would have a broken ankle if he walked. But he did limp over to the locker room, and that was the end. And that was the last we saw of Jalen Brunson. So Brunson's now down. The team has now lost 6 of its last 8 games. And I think what was particularly alarming about last night's game, beyond just the fact that they're struggling, and beyond the fact that also Jalen Brunson got hurt, is Karl-Anthony Towns put on one of his worst performances as a New York Knick. And it was bad enough his own individual play was terrible. When you see the cap go down, you expect your number 2 guy, who is a perennial all-star, to step in and say, okay, you know what? I know we're down. I know there's a big lead here, but I'm going to put the team on my back and allow us to get back into this game because, the team's got to know that we still got leaders. We still got a guy who can come in and help. And that was not what you got from Karl-Anthony Towns. 5 for 14, 0 for 1 from 3. He did have 5 steals, ironically, so it's shocking he had 5 steals because he allowed Precious Achiuwa to absolutely take his lunch. Precious Achiuwa destroyed the Knicks last night. He had 24 and 14. He also was talking before the game, talking about kind of like his time with the Knicks. And he enjoyed, obviously he's a New Yorker. I think think he's a Queens guy, if I'm not mistaken. But he's definitely a New Yorker, and he, talked about how he loved playing in New York. But the Tibbs stuff was difficult on him, and the idea that guys on the bench weren't given opportunities were difficult. And the quote I saw that I'm pretty sure it wasn't like NBA Central. I'm pretty sure it was a real quote, but I don't have it up here. But I'm pretty sure what he had said was something along the lines of like, you can't say you don't have a bench if you're not using them or you don't know what you have, which is essentially, it's so funny because you hear all these Tibbs defenders and people defend Tibbs to the death, and then you hear people who play for Tibbs, people who work with Tibbs, people who know Tibbs, who will tell you the same things that the fans are saying. And then but then again, the Tibbs defenders will be like, oh, hear no evil, speak no evil with this guy. So it is quite ironic. But Shua, who has gone to Sacramento in a team that only has 11 wins, though they've won now, I think 3 in a row. They beat the Rockets, they beat the Lakers, and now they beat the Knicks. So mini spurt for the previously 8-30 Sacramento Kings that are now 11-30. But Precious Achiuwa has been maybe the only bright spot for this team. There have been several nights where I've seen him put up big numbers, whether it's been starting, whether it's been coming off the bench. He's been a good find for them. And again, you go back to the same thing. Like, this was a guy who at times looked unplayable playing for the Knicks, or wasn't just getting time, period, because Tom Thibodeau was playing an 8-man rotation. Could he have been more useful? Is something we'll never know, because he's now not with the Knicks and Tom Thibodeau's not here. But it was noteworthy that Precious Achiuwa, I think, was absolutely one of the big difference makers in the Kings' win last night. But Karl-Anthony Towns, an absolutely terrible performance. And what was striking to me about Towns was, at times, it was reminiscent of the worst of the Julius Randle experience. Like, when I think about, like, pouting, disinterested, sloppy, no attention to detail, lifeless, like, that was not the entire Julius Randle experience. Julius Randle had some amazing moments, some great games, some great seasons for the Knicks. But Julius Randle's time here, we all know, was a roller coaster. And part of the excitement about him leaving was that we were off that roller coaster of seeing games like what we saw from Karl-Anthony Towns last night. But it feels like Karl-Anthony Towns is actually molding into a version of Julius Randle, not necessarily in being just like the cantankerous character that Randle was at times, but the unevenness, the nights where it's like he doesn't want to be on the court. Like last night looked like a night he looked so disinterested, and when the team then needed him to step up, he just seemed, again, disinterested in keeping and stepping up to the plate. And there have been a lot of nights this year where it feels like he's just floating around. Sometimes I look at his stats, I'm kind of stunned he's averaging as many points and rebounds as he is. It's like he's so talented, I think he kind of could roll out of bed and get 20 and 10. But there have been too many nights this season, particularly, where you watch Towns and it's just like he's floating. And he has mentioned that it's been a learning curve with the offense. They've been talking about him and Mike Brown trying to get on the same page. And it almost feels like when things aren't going his way, or he's not feeling quite as comfortable, it's kind of like he throws in the towel in these individual games. And this was not a night where the Knicks needed him to throw in the towel. The Knicks have a back-to-back against a formidable opponent later tonight. They're playing against the lowly Sacramento Kings, and the captain got hurt, and this has been a miserable West Coast trip so far. That's a game you got to get in the bag. That's a game you got to try to win. Even with Brunson down and you down 15 points, you got to find a way to get back and steal that game. And the Knicks, at times, felt like the Kings were trying to give it away, because they're the Sacramento Kings. At the end of the day, they're the Sacramento Kings, and they're going to give it up. And it seemed like the Kings at times were begging the Knicks to get back in the game. And the Knicks would cut it to 12, cut it to 15, cut it to 14, but never really could make a real push, in part because the guy who should have been the leader on the court just did not show up. Did not show up in any way. Extremely disappointing in that regard. And I do think this stretch and Karl-Anthony Towns' play is ironic, because we just came, I guess, about less than a week ago, where you had James Dolan go on to the radio station I work at, WFAN. He was on with Craig Carton and Chris McMonagle. Shout out to C-Mac. Shout out to Craig. Phenomenal interview that they were able to nab to start the new era of their show on WFAN. And James Dolan says, what, to be honest, to be clear, what I've been saying, which I wouldn't trade. We're not trading anybody. Like, this team is well put together. They really enjoy being around each other. There's a great camaraderie. There's a great chemistry. And we feel like we can win a title. I don't think I need the whole we're going to win a championship aspect. There's a little braggadocious, James, like he typically does, getting ahead of his skis on something when I'm like, just don't say anything. Like, or just be normal. Can we just be normal, James Dolan, for just this 10, 15-minute interview? And don't give any bulletin board material, something that can come back to bite us. And sure enough, he put out there, we didn't put up the NBA Cup banner because we're going to put up a real NBA championship banner. I'm like, oh, God. And I expect this team to win a championship. I'm like, oh, God. These are things you can feel, but I put it out there in public. Why I put the pressure on those guys? Why? I don't know. But it's Dolan. You know how he goes. But he was saying that, we're not looking at really making any trades. Like, we like the team that's put together, and this team likes playing together. They don't look like they like playing together right now. They're not acting like a team that is trying to make sure they stay together. I don't know if they have a false sense of security that no one's being traded, or I don't know if it's the opposite, where maybe like Karl-Anthony Towns kind of knows that he's dead man walking as soon as Giannis truly does become available, and that the Knicks will make the move. I have no idea, but he has at times this year played like a guy who's like expecting to be traded. Last night was another night where he played like a guy expecting to be on another team soon. And I saw my guy, Jonathan Macri, make a good point just trying to watching his game. It was like, man, if you're going to play like this, if you're this disinterested, just take him off the game. And which again reminds me of the Julius Randle experience. There are so many nights that Knicks fans can talk about how they would watch these games and Julius Randle would be on his BS. And you're like, just have him sit. Like, if this is how he's gonna play, we're uninterested in watching this for the next 35 minutes. Have him sit and mope and complain or whatever, but I'm not watching this. That's how Towns felt last night for me watching him. Again, not the cantankerous kind of moody guy that Randall was, but just disinterested, not aggressive, it was just a terrible performance. And I think with how the team is playing, losing 6 out of his last 8 after the high that was winning the NBA Cup, I think this is the kind of stretch that will make the team definitely, at the very least, reconsider whether or not they need to go all in on a move for Giannis Antetokounmpo. Now, whether or not they have the means to do that, I have no idea. I tend to think that they don't have the means to make a move, but the NBA is a weird beast where at times, not always, because I mentioned Damian Lillard, I mentioned Donovan Mitchell as guys that didn't get to go where they want to go, but at times, throughout a lot of parts of the NBA history, when a player's requested a trade or demanded a trade or been in a position where the team was about to move him, a big star, typically that guy finds a way to get to the destination that he wants to go to. That is typically how it works when it comes to the mega star talents. So while I don't look at the Knicks in terms of their assets or lack thereof when it comes to draft picks and say this is a team that can find a way to get Karl-Anthony Towns, not Karl-Anthony Towns, Giannis Antetokounmpo, I do look at what the history of the NBA says and how things normally go and say, but if he really wants to be a Knick, which again, there's been more rumors and stuff recently that the expectation is that Giannis still wants to go to the Knicks if he does get traded, then there's that aspect being like, well, it may not matter. They may make a deal anyway. But I'm not sure. I'll also say this. I'm also not sure that that's the answer. Even if they decide to say, you know what, this is not working out, so we're going to make the move for Giannis. I've said before, I think if they trade OG Anunoby, they trade their opportunity to win a championship. I think he's a absolute must keep. And if you're getting rid of a lot of your depth because you don't have draft capital in order to trade for Giannis, I think that is a big mistake. I think that is something that could hurt the team because they're going to face teams with more depth and teams that have a lot of talent. And I think that could be a big loss. If you're losing Mikal Bridges and Karl-Anthony Towns and maybe a Deuce McBride, and those guys are obviously key players to the team. And you get Giannis back. Giannis is great, but maybe you bring back Kyle Kuzma or other crap from the Bucks. I'm not excited about that. I can't look at that and say, oh, now the Knicks are a much better team. I don't know. I think the jury would be out. So the Knicks aren't in a great spot right now. I do caution it is January, and the Knicks are a team that is worried about basketball in April, in May, in June. And I think your hope is that what you're seeing from this team is typical lack of interest in January ball on the West Coast in Sacramento, and not something that is indicative of bad signs for the future. That this is a team that actually may end up having major trouble down the road because they're not they're getting exposed. The defensive issues are getting exposed. Teams have not caught up to the Mike Brown offense, and they're not making the right adjustments. And the team is fatigued potentially, which is something that Mike Brown mentioned a couple of days ago. We've seen these teams that have won the NBA Cup, and because of the scheduling around it, I'm not saying that this is why they struggled after, but teams that won the NBA Cup and then had to go through the schedule of the NBA Cup final and then going back into the regular season, they've all struggled coming out of it. The Lakers essentially blamed it for why their season went AWR a couple years ago. The Bucks had problems coming out of the the NBA Cup last year. And the Knicks is undeniable. They're having issues now coming out of the NBA Cup. I don't know if that's something that the commissioner ends up having to look at because it's definitely become now a trend, or if that's just an excuse. And I'm not really in the mood for making excuses right now, but it is something to note that has been a reality. And that is the Knicks' reality right now. If they lost 6 out of the last 8 games, they were embarrassed and absolutely punked by all teams, the Sacramento Kings, which is awful and embarrassing. And we'll have to see where things go from here. So, again, we got my guy Manny Rodriguez. Super excited to have him on. He'll be coming on live at 9 a.m. Primarily to talk Giants. When I asked him to come on the show, it was to talk Giants. I texted him late as the news was breaking, in part because I assumed he was up late watching the Knicks. Because whether we're doing Maggie and Pearl show starting at 6 a.m. Eastern, or we're not doing Maggie Pearl show starting at 6 Eastern, Manny was the type of guy who would stay up to watch Knicks West Coast games, get 2 or 3 hours of sleep, and then come in and do Maggie and Pearl show. So I texted him assuming that he was watching the game because a late night game is not a detriment to Manny Rodriguez, even if he has a job that requires him to be in place by 5:30 a.m. the next morning. So I was like, he don't even got that to worry about anymore. So I know he's watching this game. So I texted him. Did not text him about the game because also Manny takes all these losses very hard. I think I take Knicks losses hard. Manny Rodriguez is a mess when the Knicks lose games and when they're struggling. But so I texted him assuming he was awake, and he was because I think he was watching that game, that terrible performance, and he agreed to come on. So he'll be on at 9 a.m. We'll be talking about the Giants hiring John Harbaugh. I also want to get his thoughts on the Knicks and where they are and how he's feeling. Can't be great given where things are at this moment in time. I do want to shift gears real quick. As we await Manny Rodriguez to something that is come up. Actually, no, I don't want to talk John Morant yet. I want to talk about the Blue Jays and the pursuit of Kyle Tucker. So, and this is also the reason why I'm getting to this because we've been getting stuff on Kyle Tucker also this morning. So, real quickly, I want to see if I can play this sound for you. I'm trying to see if I can get this to work here. Let me open up the system here. But the Kyle Tucker pursuit is hot and heavy, and we're in the point where it seems like a deal could be announced soon. I don't want to say imminent, but like we're kind of getting in that ballpark where it seems like whatever is going to be Kyle Tucker's future, we'll find this out soon enough. I don't know if I can get this thing going, but what was interesting was Jeff Passan, who works at ESPN. He was on, there we go, I got this thing on. That's why my apologies for the little bit of freezing that was happening there. Jeff Passan was on Sportsnet in Canada talking about the pursuit of Kyle Tucker. We know the Mets desperately interested. We know the Blue Jays desperately interested. I don't know how desperate the Dodgers are, but the Dodgers are the Dodgers. They want every star player, so they're also invested. They are the 3 teams that are expected to be in this hunt for Kyle Tucker. I want you guys to hear from Jeff Passan how far the Blue Jays are willing to go to make Kyle Tucker happen. Let's hear this from Jeff Passan, assuming this video works. Let's see.
Yeah, I think it's going to happen this week, and it could be sooner than that because I think at this point he sort of understands what the market is. In the way that it has played out so far, is that the Toronto Blue Jays have really been the only team that has shown the willingness to go as deep as 10 years potentially, and to have that big ticket deal that we normally see given to a free agent, Kyle Tucker's caliber. Now,
10 years. 10 years is what Jeff Passan is saying the Blue Jays are potentially willing to go in order for them to sign Kyle Tucker, which is stunning to me only because if a 10-year deal is potentially on the table, and shout out to the Sportsnet and shout out to Jeff Passan, then what the hell is Kyle Tucker waiting for? Why is he messing around with the Mets? Why is he messing around with the Dodgers? To be clear, I mean, he said the Toronto Blue Jays have been the only team that's been shown the willingness to go as deep as 10 years potentially. So maybe potentially that part of the quote is doing a lot of work there, where maybe there's been innuendo or maybe consideration and talk that maybe we'll go 10 years, but maybe that offer actually hasn't been placed to Kyle Tucker. But Kyle Tucker, apparently, again, this is, according to Jeff Passan, the only team that has agreed to go long-term on a mega deal. Again, which makes me ask, why hasn't he signed it then? The Blue Jays say we'll give you 10 years, but we'll also only offer you like $290 million. like is the AAV so low that he's like 10 years locked into a deal that may not look good in 10 years? That is to me the only scenario where that's why he's not a Blue Jay. The deal has to be such a low AAV for a player the caliber of Kyle Tucker that he looks at it and says, for me to lock into this team for 10 years, I assume with no opt-outs, at a number where by the end of it, when we get to inflation, it's going to look like nothing, is bad business. Where the Mets, who are giving me a short-term deal, but are giving me a lot more money AAV, we mentioned the $50 million per year, and then I can double dip and get another big deal after that, because we're talking about a 4-year deal, maybe with opt-out, or a 3-year deal with an opt-out. That may be more appealing to him because he could maximize his worth in the current and potentially in the future if he continues to be a star player. So I assume that's what he's weighing. But if we're talking about a 10-year, $400 million contract or a 10-year, $450, I don't know what we're waiting for. I don't think, to me, like, the difference between 10 years, $10 million AAV, but one team's offering you 10 years, one of your teams offering you 4, I don't see how that's a conversation. I don't see how that's a big decision to make. But the word is that he is indeed coming down to the wire here. I believe I saw from John Heyman, and I want to make sure I get this right, that this was kind of like breaking news, so to speak. I don't know, breaking, but it was just a tweet he put out, and it was that the expectation for Kyle Tucker to come to a deal essentially could come down to today. This is what John Heyman said. He said, folks involved say a deal for number 1 free agent Kyle Tucker could come as soon as today. Ex-teammates guess he'd prefer Toronto over an even bigger market and likes spring near Tampa. Mets offered $50 million a year deal. Dodgers are used to winning. Anyone else is a major upset. So Heyman says that he thinks people around Tucker who know Tucker think he will want the Blue Jays, given, I guess, the information that we know. But nothing has happened yet, but he's saying that a deal could come down as early as today. So I guess we'll have to see what ends up happening. You also have Mike Puma, who is also now confirming what we had already known. Mike Puma is saying, this is Mike Puma from the New York Post, saying the Mets, according to a source, have a 4-year offer on the table for Kyle Tucker. Jim Duquette first suggested yesterday the Mets had possibly offered that length, because again, originally the word was 3 years. Was the offer. Then word came out that, well, there may be an opt-in for a 4th year. Now, according to Mike Puma, he's saying that it is a 4-year offer on the table for Kyle Tucker at that number of $50 million. So it's going to come down to like what John Heyman put out there. Is it the length and security of a 10-year agreement and much, bigger city to live in terms of spring training and off season, where the Toronto Blue Jays spring training is near Tampa, Do you want the $50 million a year offer where you're getting all this crazy bread on a short-term deal? You don't have the long-term security, but you get a lot of damn money. And if you perform the way you hope you perform, you may be able to get another $50 million deal in theory. Or do you want to win? So the way he framed that makes me assume the Dodgers are not offering as much money as the Mets and the Blue Jays. That's how that looks to me. The Dodgers have become the boogeyman, so we'll see what ends up happening. But that's at least how that's framing. So we'll see what's happening with Kyle Tucker in a second. We're going to shift gears here, man, because I want to make sure we get my guy in the fold. Super excited to have him on the show. We mentioned he'd be here at 9 a.m. He's here promptly before 9 a.m. I want to give a major shout out and a major thank you and welcome to my guy, Manny Rodriguez. Manny, what is happening, my guy? Manny, you hear me? Manny, do you hear me? You're on. Oh no, your mic. You're muted. I don't know if I don't hear you. Are you muted? Guests has muted themselves now. I see. Manny, we're trying to get Manny going here. We definitely see you, and we definitely see your collage of New York paraphernalia behind you. Yeah, it says guests has muted themselves. So you are muted somehow. I don't think I can mute you. So I muted guests. Can I unmute them? Let's see. I tried to unmute you, but I couldn't. It says guests has muted themselves. Is there any like sound button or anything over there? That yeah, I don't know. I can't look on your end, so I can't see what you're seeing in terms of now you're frozen. So that's not good. Trying to get guy Manny in the mix here. Yeah, he says he's okay. Oh, now I'm offline. I hope that doesn't mean I'm. All right, Manny's gone. Let's see. It looks like I'm still live. I'm trying to make sure. It says you're offline. So I don't know. It looks like I'm not offline in terms of the show. It looks like everything's still good because we did have internet issues. Yeah, my internet's still fine. That's good. We did have internet issues earlier in the in this 40 days and 40 nights. Obviously, I think you guys remember I believe it was day 2 when internet went out, which sucked. That was really unfortunate. So that sucked. But my internet's fine, and we're still live, so we're live. So hopefully we'll get Manny back, or hopefully he'll call me back. I may be able to see if I can get my guy a Zoom or something. Maybe let's see. Can I show Zoom? Let's see. Can I get him a different way to get in here? Let's see what's going on here, man. Schedule. No, that's not gonna work. All right, Manny's coming back here. Let's see if we can get him on this time. Let's see how this is gonna go. All right, my guy Manny. Oh, let's try it one more time. All right, my guy Manny. I feel like
can you hear me now?
All right, we got you now. I think we got you. You may be on a little bit of a delay, but I do hear you now. I think it might be a little bit of a connection issue. But Manny Rodriguez, formerly of Maggie and Perlow Show, my homie, my ace, coming on to talk Giants football. The Giants, of course, make the huge hire of bringing in one John Harbaugh, a deal that the Giants were desperate to make happen. They were all in on John Harbaugh from the beginning. And considering this is big Giant news, and I was definitely desperate to get a Giants fan on the show, I said, who else but my guy, Manny, to come on. So, Manny, how you doing, my guy?
I mean, I'm doing a lot better today. I'm doing a lot better than I was, at about 12:15 yesterday watching the Knicks. So, yeah, that's for damn sure.
And that's what I said earlier. I said, you know what? I sent out the text having no idea for sure that Manny was actually watching the Knicks game. But considering you are someone who, even when we had to be in Manhattan at 5 a.m. to get ready for Maggie and Perloff, you were someone who would be watching West Coast Knicks games, getting 2 or 3 hours of sleep, and then coming into the show. So I made the educated guess that you would also be awake watching that terrible Knicks game and be able to answer my text when I said I need to get a guest for the show tomorrow, Talk Giants. I said, let me text Manny because I assume he's watching this game. And sure enough, you responded to my text, and that's why you were here. So I'm happy to have you on, man. And I know people in the chat are also really excited to see you here, obviously, because a lot of folks who have followed the Maggie and Perloff show, who watched us through the stream, listened on the radio, listened on the Odyssey app, they all became familiar with your phenomenal work, as I may have lost Manny now, so hopefully we'll get him back soon. I think we're having a little bit of connection issues. I'm hoping we can find a way to get this ball rolling. I'm trying to make sure that anything I have open is not screwing this thing up. So apologies for the technical difficulties. If you guys are obviously dealing with it or seeing it as well, but no, Manny, again, he was a phenomenal part of the show. His charm, his humor, his quirkiness, all the different things you would say about anybody in this field, he has it all. I love the chat, by the way. We're just having so much fun with this. I see John Lean saying let's blame Verizon for the lack of connection issues. This is super funny. So again, hopefully we'll get Manny on here. I'm trying to see if there's any other option, maybe to go beyond just the options that we're doing to get Manny on the air here. But again, you guys have been a super supporter when it comes to what happened with the end of the Maggie Perloff show, and hoping to get see some kind of, we'll see what the future holds obviously for the show, but having you guys be so supportive in it was something that's been an absolute thrill. We got my guy Manny back. Hopefully, Manny, I think you hear me. We definitely hear you. I want to get your thoughts. How you been, man? And what are your thoughts on the John Harbaugh hire?
I mean, I'm. Thank you for having me. Number one, I'm very excited to have John Harbaugh in with the Giants. I mean, what the fan base wanted. This is what they were clamoring for, and they got it. Good on John Mara for actually getting the job done.
So when it comes to Harbaugh, I think one of the things that I think stood out to me as something that I think Giant fans should be excited about, because you heard it on the show and you were very much against it because I said it multiple times. I thought Mike McCarthy would have been the great hire for them, the best hire, because I think they needed an offensive head coach, a guy who had experience bringing along young quarterbacks and turning them into stars. But I think the fact that you're getting Todd Monken to go along with John Harbaugh is a huge, huge plus. Do you also see that as well? And we might have lost Manny again, because I do not. He's frozen still. So it's unfortunate. I'm wondering, we might be having issues with Manny's Wi-Fi. I feel like this is a Manny issue. I don't know for sure. It could be my issue, but I mean, obviously my stream has been going fine here, so that sucks, because I think Manny was about to cook there. So I'm really looking to forward to seeing what he can do. I'm trying to see if there's any other way I can get him on while the show is live, which is obviously not most ideal, but seeing if maybe there's something else I could do here. He just texted me the Wi-Fi is not the greatest, so that's unfortunate, man, because I know a lot of you guys were really excited to have see the reunion of Manny and EJ here, as we kind of tried to hold it down as much as we could on Maggie and Perloff show. Maybe I know there's a way to join via Zoom. I'm wondering if there's one more thing I can do to see if I can get him on a Zoom call and see if I can get him that way. But it might be tricky. Yeah, it might be tricky. Apologies. This is the aspect of streaming live, which I know is part of the game. It's part of why this is a tricky thing to do. Is you do things live and you see how it goes, and sometimes it goes well, sometimes it goes terrible, and sometimes you got to troubleshoot live on the air. So that's a little bit of what we're doing here to see if we can try one more time to get Manny back on. I feel like I'm hearing something. I don't know if that is Manny or whatever, but I'm trying to turn on my Zoom and see if that's a way I can get him to come on the show. So let's see if we can find a way to make this happen. But I'm putting up the Zoom here. Let's see if I can then send a link over to Manny and see if that works out. Because maybe my system that I'm working on here, maybe that's not working out, but maybe I can find a way to get him to participate in a different way by having him join via Zoom. Let me try to see if I can get this up here. Copy this link. I'm going to send this link to him real quick. I will say, and again, thinking about the John Harbaugh hire, and now that's one domino that's fallen, that John Harbaugh is officially Giants head coach. You start to wonder if we'll see other teams move a lot quicker. One of the things that had been discussed was this idea that, well, John Harbaugh, now that he's out of the mix, it then opens up the possibility that someone like Kevin Stefanski, who was seen as the guy who was likely going to be the runner-up, so to speak, to the to whoever is going to lose out on Harbaugh, he will be runner-up for either the Giants or the Falcons job. So now we know for a fact that there will not be John Harbaugh going to the Falcons. Does that mean someone like Kevin Stefanski now becomes the guy for the Falcons? And does that move quickly? Does Kevin Stefanski get hired in a couple of days or within a week? I think those are questions still to be determined. So I'm hopeful that we can get answers to that soon. And the one thing that we didn't get to wait for, which was something that also was being discussed, and I mentioned with Dan Graziano in his post yesterday, and perhaps part of the reason why the Giants were so aggressive in trying to get John Harbaugh was, is there also a possibility that, the Packer job still becomes open? Because I'm going to say it, like I keep saying it, man. They said they're quote-unquote working on a deal to bring back Mike LaFleur, who's right now on a lame duck status after their debacle. I want to see if there is a possibility that that job still opens up. I want to see if that opens up because I've seen too often the situation where, we're working on a deal and then all of a sudden we can't come to an agreement and we had to move on. I've seen that happen way too many times. So I want to see if that ends up being true, that they work on a deal and the deal gets signed and Mike and LaFleur ends up being the coach of the Green Bay Packers moving forward. But I want to see it happen before I really believe it, because I've seen too often. I've seen too often that not work out. I've seen too often the idea of being like, oh yeah, we're working on an agreement, like nothing to see here, and then all of a sudden the guy's fired. That happens a lot in the NFL. Happens a lot in sports, and they use it sometimes as a way to kind of soft launch, so to speak, a parting of ways. I wonder if there's any possibility that is going to happen here. So we'll see what goes on with that, man. I'm trying to see. I got Manny here on Zoom. I'm trying to see if there's a way I can get him now via this show. Now, this is, again, troubleshooting live on the air. Not always the most fun thing to do, but it is what we're upset. We got you here live on the show via Zoom. So TBD, I guess, with that. Okay, I do see him now. All right, I see Manny. I believe I'll be able to hear Manny in a second. Manny, do you got me?
I hear you. Can you hear me, or is this?
I hear you. You do sound incredibly delayed, though, so that would be a problem. I'm also not on. Oh yeah, no, yeah. I think we definitely hear you, but yeah. Can you give me a mic check real quick just to see? Yeah, you sound like you're in the Matrix, buddy. Yeah, it sounds like you're in the Matrix. It might. I think
check.
it's
1 2 1 2.
connective
Quick brown
issue,
fox jumped over the lazy
thing,
dog.
unfortunately. Because we definitely see you, and you're not as bad. But yeah, just real quickly, I did ask you earlier. I'll just get this in here, and we'll try to get as much in here as we can. You did mention how you were excited about it. I mentioned Todd Monken being someone who, Manny maybe out. So I don't know if he sees me or I'm muted, or he's down. He's putting it. I'm gonna put him down there. See what's going on. He said he hear me. Okay, so he said he hear me. So my bad. I couldn't tell. I saw he took his headphones off. So no, I was just asking because what Todd Monken being a part of this, is that also something that's exciting for you in terms of what the Giants are doing here and why you're excited about the move?
No, I'm here.
They didn't, and I think that was, again, if you're not getting an offensive coach, if you can get someone who is a well-seasoned offensive coordinator, I think that's something that's really exciting.
I mean, what
and
else
I
do
know,
you
again,
have,
the audio
AJ?
might not be the greatest.
It's
So I'll
kind of
just ask
slim
one quick
pickings when it
question
comes to the
for you
offensive
now
coordinator
before I get you out of here,
position.
and we'll set this
not
up in a better
ideal.
way, make sure the connection is what we want it to be, so we can do this
You
thing the
can
right way.
maybe
Because
convince me for the fella that just got fired down in Miami.
Even though it's been a kind of a mess,
but
it's been awesome to see you. I think
what
a lot
other
of people are
options
excited
do
to
the
see us
Giants
together,
really
back
have at
together
offensive
again,
coordinator? There really
like we
isn't
did for
much.
those that glorious year plus that we were together on Maggie and Perloff show. But just real quickly, How do you feel now about expectations for the season? Like now that you have Harbaugh, and this is a team that obviously has had struggles in terms of making the playoffs, being a consistent winner. Year one, not knowing what's going to happen in free agency or draft, but year one, what expectations do you have for the Giants? Manny, awesome to have you here. Yeah, no, not the greatest connection and everything, but seeing your face, seeing you good. I know people happy to see you doing good, man. And we'll definitely touch base and have you on again soon, man. Definitely appreciate this, bro.
You have the quarterback.
Peace.
You have.
That's my guy, Manny Rodriguez. Apologies to the audience, obviously, for technical difficulties that did not allow that to go quite as clear as we would have wanted, obviously. But you heard there a little bit through the matrix a little bit about Manny saying 10 double-digit wins is what he'd hope for. But I think he also would say he'd hope for, playing around 500 just to get the ball rolling. And double-digit wins is that's lofty. That's lofty. If you're talking about double-digit wins for a team that won, 4 games this year? And they won their last 2 games of the season, so like they were 2 wins most of the season, and they crawled their way to 4 wins. I'm not sure if that's really the vibe that a lot of people would expect. This idea that 4 wins, you go from 4 wins or to 10. 10 means you're going to the playoffs. A 6-win difference from one year to the next. That is massive. You don't see that happen quite often. But I think that's the excitement that you see Giants fans end up having for getting a guy like John Harbaugh with his pedigree and his resume. So again, apologies for technical difficulties, but massive shout out to my guy Manny. He's again a great dude, great friend, and it's almost for me it's almost like even though from a production standpoint that didn't go nearly as clean as we wanted and hoped for, it was still good and cool to see a show happening and a stream happening with me on one side and Manny on the other. Manny sending a hilarious text being sorry for being a Verizon customer, which by the way, again, shout out to John Lean. John Lean posted as well as blame Verizon. So that's been the running joke. And maybe that's what's happening. I don't know. Maybe Verizon is the reason why that was a mess. We obviously had Ray Jarvis on the air last night. He talked about the J. Cole situation, and he was awesome on it, and we had no technical difficulties to see him. So yeah, maybe it's a Verizon deal. We got someone in the chat also being like we have to turn off video on Zoom calls all the time, shaking my head. So yeah, I kind of wondered if maybe video was the problem, but that scene, the audio was even not great. That seemed like that was a connective issue from his end onto like the service. Again, since he's been off, my stream's been fine, and obviously I've been fine doing this show for the past 4 days outside the one day where my show got cut off because of just the internet outage period that happened in my building. But shout out to my guy Manny. Again, great dude, great guy, and I'll make sure he gets some serious Wi-Fi next time, and we lock him in on here because we want to talk some Knicks too. Part of me wondering is did he make sure he had a spotty connection so he could just get off briefly his Giant takes, knowing that I couldn't grill him about the Knicks, so he was just like, I know you can't hear me, but go Giants, great hire. Don't ask me about the Knicks. Bye. Is that possible? Is it possible? I don't know. But again, that's my guy. It's my road dog. Nothing but love for my guy, Manny Rodriguez. And just to even talk to him through the Matrix briefly was a treat for me. So shout out to him. Thank you so much for coming on the show. The chat is in there, man. Like, the chat is there. I want to know what you guys are thinking about what's happening with all the stuff going on. I also want to get my guy John Lean putting out there. My Sixers are looking good, but we know what happens with Embiid in the playoffs. Yeah, the Sixers, look, anybody who knows me and has followed me and followed, my NBA watching knows that I have no love for Joel Embiid in the Philadelphia 76ers, which is like most Knicks fans. Now, I mean, I'm going to talk about him objectively, I'm doing my job, right? So, I'm not going to be biased against them. But do I root for them? Do I hope that they have success? Absolutely not. With that being said, they do look pretty good. I think that they have handled the Knicks in the games that they've played. And Joel Embiid is now starting to look a lot better. Now, last night was a terrible showing. They got destroyed by the Cavs at home in a game that was not all that competitive. I think, that was a little disappointing considering the Sixers had, seemed to be turning things around. They were playing consistent ball. And then, the Cavs come in and they kind of run them out the building. Donovan Mitchell was phenomenal. He had 35 points in the game, hit 5 threes. And the Cavs, I'll tell you one thing, watching the Knicks and Sixers matchups, the Sixers are not a team I want to face. And I know some Knicks fans and their bravado, they're like, how dare you? I do not think this version of the Knicks matches up well with this version of the Sixers. Whether or not this is the version of the Sixers we get in the playoffs, which is what John Lean's referring to, is a great question. And the answer is probably no, if history tells us anything, is that Embiid will probably get hurt or something bad is going to happen. And they're not going to be the same team once playoff time comes around. But the version that we've seen of late outside of tonight is not a team I want to see. I do think last night's blowout loss to the Cavs in some ways also is a precursor to, I don't think the Sixers want to see the Cavs in the playoffs. Because while the Knicks don't match up well with this version of the Sixers, I think this version of the Sixers, as good as they've been playing, does not match up good with even this bad version of the Cavs. Because the Cavs have, their greatest strength is also their greatest weakness. The greatest strength is that they have 2 all-star guards. And that means that they constantly, every time they're on the court, they're going to have a true ace as a shot creator, facilitator of the offense, whether it's Mitchell or whether it's Garland. Garland's healthy. But it is also their weakness because they're both short. They're both not that great defensively. And it requires then those bigs, their other strength, which is the play of the big men, Mobley and Allen, requires them to do a lot of heavy lifting to cover for them mess ups defensively. When you got those guards going against another team that plays small guards, Maxey and Edgecombe, I think, better defenders than Mitchell and Garland, but nonetheless, small guards versus small guards, I mean, that feels like an even matchup. They look at that and say, okay, we don't have to put Garland on a 6'6" guy. We don't have to put Donovan Mitchell on a 6'6" guy. Like, we're playing, they're playing our game. They're playing, the true center and 2 small guards in the backcourt. And the Cavs, I think, feel extremely comfortable playing that kind of game. So I think they took it to the Sixers last night. They shot the lights out in that game. They hit 23s. When the Cavs shoot like that and they have the ability to shoot like that, when they shoot like that, it's extremely tough to beat them because they put so much pressure in terms of getting into the paint, spraying it out, getting to the rim because Garland and Mitchell are so hard to contain in terms of what they do with the basketball that if you have trouble containing them and then they can spray it out to threes, you're cooked. You're cooked. And last night, Donovan Mitchell, 11 for 22. He is 35. Darius Garland plays only 23 minutes, scores 20 points and 8 for 13. He has 7 assists in the 23 minutes he played. Mitchell has 9 assists to go with those 35 points. I mean, I don't even know that math, but trying to do, Steiner math here in a matter of a couple of seconds, it feels like they must have accounted for at least 70 or 80 points last night, just those guys alone. Those guys alone. I mean, count points, you count the assists that they've made. So the Sixers playing those small guards, having to try to guard those guys, having trouble, Joel Embiid also not being the defender he once was, it creates some problems. And I think that is going to be something that if the Sixers see the Cavs in a 3-6 or 4-5 matchup, I don't think that's a team they want to see. Now, both teams have, the label of being kind of postseason chokers. So on the flip side, you say, well, at least we're not facing a team that has the confidence to know that they can get through in the playoffs. I think they kind of Spider-Man meme each other a little bit, where they're both pointing like we're the same team. So for the Sixers, I think say, okay, well, at least we're not playing the Knicks or playing the Celtics, teams that have handled us in the playoffs, teams that have had playoff success. But you are facing a team from a basketball standpoint purely, matchup standpoint purely. I think you look at them and say, this is not a team we want to face. And I think that was indicative of the performance that you saw last night. So thank you for bringing up the issue with, not the issue, but the play of the Sixers, which I think has improved, but a rough night last night. I also bring back my guy Marquito in the chat as well. Talking about the situation with Kyle Tucker, which again, I know, again, doing a live show during this situation where you got NFL head coaching hires, when you got free agency happening, it's sometimes harrowing because you want to make sure you're doing the show and nothing live is broken while you're doing the show. I don't believe there's been any announcement about Kyle Tucker as of yet, but it seems like today could potentially be the day where we end up finding out what happens. So far, I don't think Kyle Tucker is signed, but you got Ariel in the chat saying, I've read rumors that Kyle Tucker is going to be the next Anthony Rendon. Once he signs a big deal, he'll fade. That is something I've heard too. Like this idea that this is a star player, without question, who the backs of his baseball card suggests that if he continues to play this way, he could see a trip to Cooperstown. But he never, ever had to be the guy. He always was kind of taking a back seat to other bigger stars. He also is not necessarily the biggest, locker room clubhouse presence. He's not the biggest leader. He's not the biggest cult of personality in that way. He's kind of understated. And that it reminds some folks of Anthony Rendon because Rendon was the same. He was no doubt great player. Again, similarly, if he played the way he was playing in Washington, the baseball card suggests he probably gets into Cooperstown, but then he goes to a team expecting him to be the man, expecting him to be a star, and expecting him to be a clubhouse leader, and it was a complete disaster. He could not handle it on the field, could not handle it off the field. They just finally bought him out, and they put him out of his misery in terms of his time there. But people have made that comparison. And the thing about that is you just don't know. That's the thing of free agency. Because to me, you say Anthony Rendon, I also think of Jason Bay, which is a Met fan you never want to think about, but it's the same deal. Guy won a championship. Guy who's been a star for his whole career. Baseball card suggests if he plays this way, as he enters his prime, he should be going to Cooperstown. And then he forgets how to play baseball as soon as he's signed to a team where he's expected to be the man. Now, with Kyle Tucker, I think the benefit, and why I don't think that will happen, or at least I don't think the comparison is necessarily the best comparison, is none of these teams he's going to be the man. And none of these teams, he probably is not going to be the highest paid player, even in Toronto. And on none of these teams is he going to be asked to be a clubhouse presence, a clubhouse leader. You could argue maybe the Mets, but I don't think that's why the Mets want him. I think that's what they brought in a guy like Marcus Semien because of that. So all the things that led to Rendon's failures, I don't think Kyle Tucker's being asked to do. Now, could he just flop because he gets a lot of money, and then the money and the pressure of just having a lot of money and being more in the spotlight, could that fate make him struggle? Definitely. It happens to all athletes. But I think that is the major difference with this, is wherever team he goes to, he kind of goes back to the Astros role. For example, last year with the Cubs was a down year for Kyle Tucker. He battled some injuries he played through some injury, but part of the reason why he's not getting this mega, he may not, because we're hearing the Blue Jays may want to offer him 10 years, I say in quotation marks. But the reason why it hasn't been this sweepstakes like it was for Juan Soto to see how much the money was going to rise and how many years he's going to get, or what it was for Shohei Ohtani, something that was expected for Kyle Tucker when we were having these same conversations last year. A lot of Yankee fans were able to kind of justify losing Soto, being all right, well, we'll just pay a little bit less for Kyle Tucker, but it'll still be a massive deal. He'll just replace Soto in right field. But the reason why that didn't happen was because of how he played with the Cubs. He was good. He was fine, but he was not a superstar. He was not how he was the year before when prior to the injury, he had 23 home runs in a span of half a season. He was on pace to hit almost 40 home runs. It seemed like he was a guy that was ascending. If he has a year like he had the year before, the years previously with the Astros, we are talking about your 10-year deal, your $450, $500 million. That is what we're seeing. That's what we're talking about. He didn't have that. And that's why the Mets feel like they may be able to get a coup and get him to sign for a lot of money for a short term. And I think that may be why you got teams like the Blue Jays feeling like, let's see if we can get him on a long-term deal. But that like $400 million bag that he thought he was getting, like we ain't giving him that. But he may take the security of having 10 years and making a lot of money. So we'll see. It's going to be interesting to see kind of how this ends up shaking out and whether or not we'll find a way to get Kyle Tucker signed today and get this thing over with. I know once you get to this point of free agency where it's just a wait-and-see game, it is brutal for every team that's involved. For the fan bases, for everyone just waiting. I remember the Juan Soto situation, which was much shorter than this Kyle Tucker thing, was brutal. The Shohei Ohtani thing, the Mets weren't really involved in that, so it wasn't brutal for me. But I know for the Blue Jays fans, for the Seattle Mariners fans, and then for the Giants and and obviously the Dodgers fans, who they got him, but they're waiting on it. Brutal. Like it's always brutal when you deal with these kind of free agent situations. So hopefully we get a resolution soon. Will we get a resolution? I'm actually not convinced it's definitely going to happen. I the way this thing works and this game works, these guys go at their own pace and they're trying to get every single dollar they could possibly get. What I'll say is one more thing on this. I mentioned before how I am still very uncomfortable with the Mets offer being so publicized about what they want, because it feels like a bat signal to the rest of baseball to say, hey, this is what the Mets are offering me. Give me more money in more years. I think if you're a Blue Jays fan, I also may feel concerned about your offer now being on the table. Maybe not so much the money, because we don't know the money yet, but the fact that that is getting out there that you are willing to go this long for years. Also, now I'm wondering, who's the team whose offer is not being publicized? There's a 3-team race. We all can agree to that. It seems like every baseball writer who's following this can agree that it's a 3-team race. The Mets offer, highly publicized. Now, Blue Jays offer, for the first time, or at least the willingness of what they may be willing to offer, now publicized. Do you have any idea what the Dodgers are going to do with this? Do you have any clue as to where the Dodgers stand in terms of what they're willing to offer? Like, I posted that. I didn't post it, but I read that tweet from John Heyman earlier today when he made his guess that this thing could be settled today. And in his tweet, he mentioned that people around Tucker, his former teammates, they feel like they think he will take the long-term security with the Blue Jays. The $50 million offer for the Mets is obviously enticing. And then what do you say about the Dodgers? Dodgers are a proven winner. Nothing about the money, nothing about what they're offering, nothing. I already said it scares me as a Mets fan. I think it also should scare you as a Blue Jay fan. Because we've seen this movie before where the Dodgers just lurk and lurk and lurk without you really knowing what they're doing or what they're offering, what they're anticipating. And then bam, they strike and they get a guy that you didn't expect. And I think for baseball, that is the worst case scenario. Because I think enough with the Dodgers and all the stars they have. I think we need to get some stars other places. And I'm tired of the Dodger dynasty. I mean, I'm tired of the fact that they're able to do this because of me, in my opinion, them gaming the system with this stupid deferring money thing. I do not think it should have been allowed. I do not think that it was fair. And I think for a team that has the kind of money the Dodgers have, it now puts them at an unfair advantage. It's what I firmly believe. I'm not going to go and say that their titles are illegitimate or anything like that. They played within the rules, and those are the rules, and it's fine. But I just think it sucks. I think it just sucks. Something can be something as simple as that. But the fact that we don't know anything about their offer, and we know about the Blue Jays offer, and we know about the Mets offer, just saying, seems like something I would be a little bit concerned about. Real quickly here, I know we're running out a little bit of time. We got about, I've been doing these shows essentially 2 hours. I don't know if I was going to go 2 hours every day, but I do want to get as much stuff as we can on this show. I do want to talk about what I was getting to right before we had my guy Manny come on the show, which is the Pittsburgh Steelers. So they have started their request for head coaching interviews now that Mike Tomlin has announced that he will not be returning as Steelers head coach. He is stepping down. From what I've seen, and this is always, it's always tricky to track who's getting the interviews, and to be clear, there could be some that have dropped as we were doing the show or maybe overnight that I missed. But from what I read, and I kept trying to see who the people they are, there are 5 candidates that the Steelers have asked for interviews. The first request. I think the first request suggests these are the leading candidates for a job, but you never know, right? Mike Tomlin was the last person to interview for the Steelers job. The last time they had a job opening, he got the job because he stunned them with how impressive he was. But the candidates that have been asked include Nate Scheelhaase. Got his name right this time. I know yesterday I think I called him Scheelhaase or whatever. It was a disaster. Apologies to Nate. But I got his name right today. Nate Scheelhaase, passing game coordinator for the Rams. Rams defensive coordinator Chris Shula. Miami defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver. Vikings defensive coordinator Brian Flores, and Chargers defensive coordinator Jesse Minter. I see these names, and it tells me what we talked about, I guess, yesterday or no, Tuesday now. What it told me Tuesday, which was these candidates and probably the next Steeler head coach is going to fall in line with what they have done in the past, which is the Pittsburgh Steelers looking for a young coordinator type who they believe could be their next head coach for the next 20 years. Meaning, some of the, they're not, Harbaugh's not on the board anymore, but some of the older candidates like Mike McCarthy, for example, that has never been their type, that is not their type, and it seems like they're not going after that kind of coach. A guy who has been a head coach before, a guy that has had a bunch of experience, and a guy who potentially you're looking at now. I know the Rooney said that the idea that they're tanking is ridiculous, that they're not trying to rebuild. We'll see. We'll see. That's what you say on January 14th yesterday. I wanted to see what the roster looks like in August, or even more clearly, maybe even next August. Because maybe if you feel like you can't move some of these contracts this year, next year, if you guys have a down year and where you're trying to figure out your quarterback situation, I want to see what the roster looks like in the next, January of next year. That's what I want to see. But I see those candidates and I see, okay, those are all young coordinator types. Brian Flores is the only other guy with head coaching experience. But like I mentioned on the show when we talked about who could replace Mike Tomlin, I mentioned Flores because Flores was a guy who Mike Tomlin gave the lifeline to. Flores had missed out on the Giants job. He went on First Take, announced his suing of the NFL, was going into detail about what he feels like are the discriminatory practices when it comes to the hiring practices for head coaches in the NFL. The Shield does not do well with litigation. The Shield does not do well with having their integrity impugned upon. And we saw what happened with Colin Kaepernick. We've seen the fights they've had with, Sean Payton and Bountygate. We've seen the fights they've happened with Tom Brady and Deflategate. We've seen the fights they've happened with Al Davis. They keep receipts. And if they have an opportunity to disappear you, they will disappear you like they did Colin Kaepernick. So Brian Flores took a great risk to file that lawsuit. That is not done. It's not like that's all. I get at some point they assume we'll have a day in court. It's not been settled. I don't know why we haven't gotten anything from it yet. I don't know if the NFL has been delaying it. I don't know what. I haven't heard anything about that joint in years. But needless to say, when that happened, it seemed like a lot of people thought, man, Flores, we may never see that dude in the NFL again. And sure enough, it was Mike Tomlin who, as their defense was struggling, said, I want to bring you on my staff. So Tomlin brought in Flores to be their linebackers coach, help with their defense, and he did help, and he did he did help the Steelers defense that season. It allowed him to then get a job as defensive coordinator with the Vikings. And by all accounts, he was very impressive. Mike Tomlin spoke extremely highly of him and his time in Pittsburgh. So it's all these other non-head coaches that they're interviewing. Anthony Weaver obviously was interim with the Dolphins, but he's not a real head coach. And then Flores, who at one point was a head coach for the Miami Dolphins, but he's in a different bag. He's in the Tomlin bag of the sense that like he was an assistant under Tomlin, and Tomlin really liked him, and the Steelers were very impressed by him. Clearly, because they also agreed to go along with this. The fact that they agreed to have Brian Flores come in when it seemed like he may have been untouchable. So the Steelers are going down the same route, it seems like. If I was a Steeler fan, I want to make the most radical hire possible. So Nate Shieldhouse would be the person who I'm getting his name right correctly today again. Nate Shieldhouse is the person that I would feel most excited about. That's the guy that I would want for a multitude of reasons. Youngest guy here. You're talking about the Sean McVay tree again, which hasn't always been as fruitful. But I also feel like McVay has talked this guy up more than any other guy he's had. He truly does feel like McVay's mentee rather. The fact that he said spoken so high of a guy who's not even like his own offensive coordinator and talked about how he's gonna be a future head coach makes me think, okay, like he really sees the goods with this guy. And I think if you think about the Pittsburgh Steelers, I see defensive coordinator Shula, defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver, defensive coordinator Flores, defensive coordinator Jesse Minter. And the Steelers typically hire defensive coaches. Mike Tomlin, Bill Cowher, right? The reason why the Steelers have not been able to win playoff games in the past 8 years of Mike Tomlin has been because their offense has simply not been good enough. For the majority of that. I know they may have had a year with Antonio Brown in there or whatever, but for the majority of that time, their offense simply not good enough. Way past the times in terms of what they were trying to do compared to where the league was going. Where the league became this explosive passing league, and Tomlin was still playing like games were 2007. Good enough to go 12-4 when it was a 16-game schedule, or good enough to go 11-5 when it was a 16-game schedule. Good enough to go, 10-7 in a 17-game schedule. Not good enough to win playoff games against Patrick Mahomes. Not good enough to win playoff games against Lamar Jackson. Not good enough to win playoff games against these elite quarterbacks and the kind of teams you see when you get to postseason football. So it doesn't mean a defensive coordinator can't have a good offense. Mike McDonald, I know their second half offense is really sputtered, but for the first half, as great as the Seahawks were defensively, Seahawks also had a great offense. I mean, you see what Jackson Smith and Jigba was doing for them. Clint Kubiak doing a phenomenal job with their offense for most of the season, and Sam Darnold was putting up awesome numbers again before he fell apart a little bit in the second half, though they still were winning. So it doesn't mean a defensive coach can't have a great offense. We just mentioned John Harbaugh had Todd Monken and Lamar Jackson running up the score on people. And he's not a defensive coach, but he's not an offensive coach either. He's a special teams guy. So it doesn't mean if you get a defensive coordinator, you can't have a great offense, but it does mean that that coach, who typically, because they think defense first, typically becomes a little more conservative, and because they're a defensive guy, probably won't have as much imprint on what the offense looks like, putting then a lot of the onus on an offensive coordinator who could be unproven, might not be a guy that we know much about, or it could be a guy who has a long track record but isn't all that impressive, like a Nate Hackett, something like that, So that is, I think, the concern for seeing defense for most of these people. When you see Shieldhouse, I see offense. I think that's exciting. And also, we really do need to try to rebuild this thing and rebuild the image and rebuild the identity of the Steelers. We got to play good defense. We got to be able to run the ball. It's the AFC North. We understand that. But that doesn't mean you also still can't have offensive explosiveness. Because the Ravens proved they could do that. The Bengals proved they could do that. Hell, even the Browns in the Nick Chubb, Baker Mayfield iteration showed you can still do that. There's no reason the Steelers can't chew gum and walk at the same time. There's no reason why they can't be a tough physical defensive team and also have an offense that can scare people. So, of those guys, and just those guys, I can't talk about other people that may come into the fray. Of those guys, I think I lean Shieldhouse. Then I'd probably go behind him. Flores and Mentor are like neck and neck. I've been a big Jesse Minter guy. I think Jesse Minter, I wanted him to be the Jets coach last year. Among the candidates that I wanted the Jets to consider. I also thought he would have been a great candidate for the Giants too. If they would have fired Daboll, and they did not, and that ended up being a poor decision. I really would have liked the idea of bringing in Jesse Minter. So he's also a very fine candidate too. He, I think, brings a lot of what you expect from Steeler football: defense, toughness, all those things. I don't expect that the Steelers be able to be as poor stopping the run in a Jesse Minter defense. So I get why he's up there. All these candidates are fine. I think they're the names that you hear when you talk about head coaching candidates. They're the team though that is not looking at offensive guys really so far, which I do find interesting. So we'll see what ends up shaking out. But what I see here, Steelers seem like they have a type in what they're looking for: a young coordinator to take over and replace one Mike Tomlin. So let's get to some other coaching stuff here. Brian Daboll and Mike McDaniel, according to Diana Rossini, apparently are the leading candidates to become the next Eagles offensive coordinator. We played the sound from this young man, and I'm going to see if I want to play it again because I want to see if I can get to the part where he talks about what he won. This was after the Eagles lost to the 49ers. A young Eagles fan was interviewed by a local news network in Philadelphia about the game, and he revealed that this was his Christmas present and that he, it was a terrible Christmas present because he got to see his Eagles in the playoffs lose to the 49ers. And this is what he said he wanted in terms of changes.
And I want him somewhere else that is not here. I love you, AJ, but you can't make those drops in that game. And I want him somewhere else.
That sounds crazy to me. Let me see if I try it one more time.
Yes, this was a huge letdown. This was my Christmas present, and I got a loss.
Oh, no. You probably would have rather had Cole, huh?
Yeah, probably. I'm feeling two of two things. A, I want AJ Brown packing his bags, and I want him somewhere else that is not here. I love you, AJ, but you can't make those drops in that game. And I also want Kevin Patullo flipping burgers at the local McDonald's or something. I don't care.
Why do you say that?
Whenever he's an offensive coordinator, it's like he's flipping burgers. One side, he's cooking. One half, he's cooking. And the other half is completely raw.
So I hope you guys were able to hear that. My headphones are a little wonky today ever since the Manny interview. So it came a little choppy for me. I hope you guys were able to hear it. But that young man talking about how first things he wanted to see were A.J. Brown gone and Kevin Patullo flipping burgers somewhere. So he got one half, right? I don't know if Kevin Patullo is flipping burgers, but he's not offensive coordinator anymore. The Eagles now have an offensive coordinator search that's happening. And according to Diana Rossini, Daboll and McDaniel are the two guys the Eagles are eyeing. This is interesting. These are two, in my opinion, very different offenses that are being proposed for the Eagles here. Daboll, I think you're looking at more quarterback run, quarterback movement type offense, which in theory would be a benefit for someone like Jalen Hurts if he is willing to run, which has been a question in Philadelphia because it has felt like at times he is not all that willing to run. But he's a great athlete. We know he can run. So hooking up with Brian Daboll and running that style in theory could work. But he's also been injury prone. And part of the reason why I don't think he's wanted to run is because he's gotten injured running. And he wants to not get hurt. So Brian Daboll has shown he has zero he has zero interest in worrying about the health of his quarterback. He was running Josh Allen crazy. He was running Daniel Jones crazy, and he was running Jackson Dart crazy. So, and Dart and Daniel Jones paid for it. So, if your hope is to keep Jalen Hurts upright, I don't know if Brian Daboll is your guy. So, Mike McDaniel, totally different offense, but more Shanahan offense, which does include some, quarterback rolling on and stuff, but it's a lot more predicated on obviously zone run blocking scheme and timing offense when it comes to passing. And a lot of it is playing simply within a system. Okay, that's one thing, but Jalen Hurts has never really, in my opinion, really been asked to do that or really thrived in that kind of offense. Now, maybe it's because he hasn't had an opportunity, and maybe he actually, this is the part of his development that'd be good for him, is that he gets to play in an offense like this where the reads are simple and timing is most important, and it is about creating mismatches and creating opportunities as opposed to what the Eagles have been doing, which is, all right, A.J. Brown, you stand there. All right, Devontae Smith, you stand there and just beat man-to-man. And if we don't beat man-to-man, then we have no other game plan. That was the Eagles' offense. I keep saying it was so remedial. They don't motion anybody. They don't, again, create mismatches. That didn't seem to be any interest to the Eagles. They looked at it as it was just like if people say they joke about this when they talk about basketball, when someone doesn't have an offense that looks like it's kind of just guys just going out there just playing one-on-one. He's got that do 'em cuz offense. Like someone gets the ball in the park and like you're not talking about a play or running a pick. It's like, yo, just do him. Like just take him to the rack. Just take him. To me, the Eagles do him cuz offense in football. It's not. They're not creating mismatches. They're not doing any motion. They're not doing anything to create easy opportunities for their quarterback. They're assuming that their receivers will win one-on-ones and their quarterback will be accurate enough to get the ball to them in those matchups. But it ends up, in my opinion, creating a very low percentage offense, which is what the Eagles were last year. So Mike McDaniel and what he's bringing from the Shanahan tree, in theory, should negate that. Mike McDaniel is extremely creative. Mike McDaniel will have motion. Mike McDaniel will be more creative in the running game than even the Eagles were, even though they've had success with Saquon Barkley. So there's aspects that I think if I painted a picture, I think I would slightly lean Mike McDaniel, but the big question will be, can Jalen Hurts actually thrive in that kind of offense? And that's a question we don't have an answer to. I think we're going to learn a lot about Jalen Hurts one way or another, whether whoever gets hired here. If Daboll gets hired, who he's had success as a coordinator before, or McDaniel gets hired and he has had success, I don't want to run to the coordinator success because he was a coordinator with the 49ers, but we know that it was obviously Kyle Shanahan calling the plays. But as an offensive play caller for the Dolphins, he has had success. Not recently, but when he first got to Miami. So these are guys that have taken other quarterbacks and thrived. Brian Daboll thrived with Josh Allen, thrived with Daniel Jones. Mike McDaniel, assisted Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco, and then initially thrived with Tua Tagovailoa. If Jalen Hurts gets these guys and he can't perform, I think those conversations about whether or not Jalen Hurts really is the guy in Philadelphia, even though he had a Super Bowl, those conversations will become louder because they'll say there's no excuse now. We get before when we hired Kevin Patullo and we weren't able to adequately replace someone like Shane Steichen after Super Bowl trips, and you had offensive coordinators who were in over their heads and you didn't perform. Okay, we can point to the offensive coordinator. And we finally got you a guy that was good. And Kellen Moore, you were great. Great. You were great during the playoffs. Up and down during the season, but we were a great team. We were a great offense, and we ended up having a great season. We won. So that maybe lends you to think that, okay, well, they're getting another season offensive play caller, that he'll be fine this time. But he's got to make it happen. If he comes in next year, I don't think they're going to blame Daboll and Mike McDaniel if things struggle. I think they're going to blame Hurts and say, listen, we have an offensive coordinator who is capable. You're the problem, man. So he better get it right. I think that there's going to be a lot of pressure on him for this upcoming season. I want to get to one more thing here before we get out of here. We've talked a ton about a lot of stuff happening in the world of sports. We got a guest in Manny Rodriguez. I wish that went much better than it did, but it was still a lot of fun. This whole journey with this show, 40 Days and 40 Nights, has been an absolute blast. Like I've said a bunch, you're enjoying the show, enjoying the live stream. We're live streaming in multiple spots. You can watch us on YouTube. New Generation Media is where we're live streaming on YouTube. That is my YouTube channel. I run with my brothers, Shamari Stewart and Kendall Stewart. We do content on sports, pop culture, particularly superhero content and Star Wars content. That is our YouTube channel. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Like the video, comment in the video, give us as much support as you can. And like this video, obviously, that's going on right now, this live stream. All the support you give us helps us a ton, so we really appreciate it. YouTube, New Generation Media, is where you'll find this live stream on YouTube. I'm also live streaming live on X. EJ_Stewart is where you'll find me on X, where I stream live. And then we're streaming live as well on Instagram. Action EJ is where you'll find me on IG Live. That's where we're streaming as well. Make sure you follow me, EJ_Stewart on X. Again, Instagram Action EJ. Make sure you follow the show's pages as well. New Generation Pod on X and New Generation Podcast on IG is where you'll find the channel's social media accounts. So before we get out of here, I do want to talk about Ja Morant, who I'm stunned that he has made 3 appearances on this show, and one of it wasn't his fault. One of it was Draymond Green making an idiotic report that the Knicks were a dark horse to get Ja Morant, based on, from my knowledge, it seems like no actual information. Nothing that was clear that was indicating that this was indeed the case. He just said it and then was like, I don't know, it just makes sense to me. And the reasons he said it made sense actually made no sense, which made it even worse. But Ja Morant is back in the news. We talked about the fact that he's eyeing Miami among the teams that are interested, that include the Bucks, the Kings, and the Timberwolves. We also learned that Ja Morant apparently had bought a house in Miami, which I actually, was not aware of or anything like that. And you see stuff like that, you don't know for sure, but that story picked up more and more as the day went on. So I'm pretty sure that that's accurate about what happened, and then he indeed did buy a house. So congrats to Ja Morant for buying a house in Miami. That seems like a lot of fun. Obviously, living in Miami is always great. Weather's always great. So, hurricane season's not great, but otherwise, fun time. So young man buys a mansion in Miami. That's the time to celebrate. So congrats to Ja Morant for that. But you buy a house in Miami when you're on the trade market and the Miami Heat are reportedly interested in you, it makes people believe that, all right, maybe you will soon be joining the Miami Heat. But I got to share my screen here because the Grizzlies are over in Berlin, and I'm not 100% sure if they actually, to be clear, I'm not sure if they have played yet, because I guess it's 9 a.m., so in theory they may have played, so apologies if they have played, but they're in Berlin, so they were practicing, and there's a shoot-around going on. This is in front of everybody, and I want you to be the judge of what you see, because it's being reported, and I think fairly I can describe it, with a teammate. I'm going to simply play the video for you to see, and I want you to be the judge as to whether or not you think this looks confrontational. I think it looks confrontational, but again, I will let you be the judge. I don't know. I see that, and that looks suspect to me. They're talking, and you say, okay, well, maybe they're just talking trash or whatever. But then there's pointing going on. There's pointing more. Then there's a guy walking away. He comes back, and then they're talking some more. So the first 50 seconds of this, I thought, okay, I mean, this could be just, man, that poker game was crazy and they're just going great. But then this is the point where I'm like, this looks a little different. Then the coach comes in trying to settle it. This guy pushes the coach away, and the coach doesn't leave. The coach is like, I'm going to stay here because I don't like where this is going. And now he's basically saying, do something, do something, do something. Do something. I'm right here. You see what he's saying? I'm right here. Seems confrontational to me. Does not look like this is a good conversation that's happening in front of people. And he's like, yeah, you walked away. That's right. That's what I thought. And that's how it ended. That didn't look good. I don't know for sure. Like, I know people around the NBA, people say, oh, this stuff happens all the time. You guys complain about stuff. You guys don't know how the NBA is. I don't know. I feel like if it happened all the time, we see it more. We see instances of coaches or players getting after each other all the time. Like, so if they say it happens all the time, but yet we never see it, and they say, oh, you guys, it happens all the time. I'm like, all right, well, why don't we see it more? I think that was confrontational. That didn't look friendly. There was another angle I saw. I couldn't find that other angle I saw, but the reverse angle of it, not from this perspective, but basically literally the from the right side of this camera view, that kind of shows more of the other guy's face and more of Ja's face as they're going back and forth. I thought it looked even worse. I thought he looked even more confrontational. And Ja Morant is in a position where he knows he's on the trade market. He was asked yesterday, how do you deal with being on the trade market? He gave a one-sentence answer. I live with it. And that was it. So it feels like the Memphis situation is becoming increasingly untenable for the Grizzlies and for Ja Morant. We're sitting here January 15th. We're still about a month or so away from the trade deadline. I don't know if this is getting to the trade deadline in terms of how long we're waiting to get Ja out of Memphis. If this is the kind of thing that's happening in a public situation, at a time, by the way, again, the Grizzlies, I believe, are in Berlin. So this is a time where the Grizzlies, this is like, not Super Bowl, but it's like the NBA at its most PR state. It's like, hey, Germans, like, welcome, and like, thank you for welcoming us, and like NBA basketball and support us and give us money. Like, this is all supposed to be about positivity. You're trying to sell the game. The last thing the NBA wants is confrontations overseas with one of their star players and their marquee players while they're in sell mode, while they're in marketing mode. That's a bad look for the NBA. And I know people say, oh, you're getting in your feelings. I'm not acting like the NBA is going to fold because this happened. It's just like, I hate when people get like that. But it is a bad look. I think if you asked Adam Silver, would he prefer that this not happen? He would have said 1,150% yes. This is terrible. Why is he doing this? What is going on? It's a bad look. It's a bad look regardless. So I looked at this situation, and again, it made me kind of pause and wonder. Ja's days, I think, are numbered even more so than we even realize. He's not. If he could be traded next week, he may be traded in a couple of days. The house is already bought in Miami. I would not be surprised if a Ja Morant move happens extremely soon. I think that's a good place to leave it, man. I want to thank you guys so much for checking out this edition of 40 Days and 40 Nights. Again, thank you guys again for checking everything out. Shout out to the guy Manny Rodriguez. I know it wasn't as clean in terms of the interview, but it was still a blast to have him. Make sure you, again, subscribe to the YouTube channel, New Generation Media. Subscribe to our podcast, New Generation Podcast Network, where you can get all the episodes of 40 Days and 40 Nights. We'll be back live streaming once again at 6 p.m. later today. So we'll have probably more information about what happened with John Harbaugh. We'll have all other details about other stuff happening in sports and pop culture. Thank you guys again so much for joining me. I'm EJ Stewart. I am out. See you.